questions. We have tons of them. What if some of those questions can be answered with a simple email? Now is that time, and welcome to Chat with Charlie. Host Stephanie Lynn is a certified spiritual life coach and psychic medium. She will work together with Spirit to answer both your submitted and live questions. Not only will Stephanie be providing you with insight, but also interviews with amazing guests. Now, your host of Chat with Charlie, Stephanie Lynn.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to WLTK-DB Let's Talk Radio, where you are joining me on the Chat with Charlie show. I have missed you guys. First, I want to say that because it's been, last week I wasn't here, and I appreciate you guys all understanding that I couldn't be here last week. But I really kind of want to jump into telling you about today's guest because first of all, I'm really excited. And the more I've researched this guest, the more excited I have become. But then, it's one of those things where you see Spirit having their fingers in things and seeing Spirit pull things together, just even for people to talk and to network. Because as we're talking backstage, we actually only live an hour apart. And I know where she lives, and she knows where my little teeny town is in the middle of nowhere. So how is that for spiritual divine? I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Hello, everybody. Hello, Charlie. Hello, Keith. I'm so glad you guys are tuning in. So today's guest, I want to tell you a little bit about her. She has been a spiritual psychic reader since 1987. She's a channeler, and she works for really using her abilities to bring in a peace, right? And what I love about, and I shared the website already, and I will share it again. It's synergyalliance.llc. But when you look on there, one of the first things you see is regeneration through human will and divine grace. And it says calling for the participation of the willing to take non-violent action to end the age of war, right? Like, what if we could all use our abilities for the collective? It's going to be a great topic. So I hope you guys are strapped in, have your snacks and your drinks for the next hour. Please help me welcome Barbra With to the show. Hello,
Hey.
Barbra.
Hi, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. I'm just even more delighted to be here now that we know.
I know. Isn't that, I'm still kind of giggling over how Spirit pulled that together. I'm always, I was just going through and doing some research, and I see, and we'll get into this more later, but that you offer classes, and I've been looking, at different teachers and people to connecting with. And then, I'm like, oh, Spirit, is this a good teacher for me? Are these classes I should look in? And then you're an hour away. So it's that divine intervention. Hello, Michael. Thank you for tuning in. So before we get into the bulk of all these things that you do and that encompass you, can you tell the viewers a little bit about your background and how this all kind of came to be part of your journey?
Oh, absolutely. I started out as a musician.
Wow.
I was at 5 years old. I was climbing up to the piano and teaching myself how to play. And I started writing songs very young when I was 12 or 13 years old.
Wow.
And so by the time I got out of high school, all I wanted to do was be a rock star. That's all I wanted.
Love it. That's awesome.
And so I went out on the road. But in high school, a mother of a friend of mine happened to be a reader, and somebody drugged me along. It wasn't like I was looking for a psychic in high school. And she became sort of my mentor, and she channeled. And when she described channeling, it was very much like how I wrote songs.
Oh, right.
So I could relate to it.
Absolutely.
And then when I started, it was spontaneous automatic writing. I was writing a letter to a friend, and it was kind of a snarky letter, honestly.
Right.
I was telling her, how bad it was to make judgments
Oh,
Just like
we all have.
completely.
I'm that brutally honest friend too. I have to say, I'm sorry to all my 3 friends out there for being that friend.
You get that. That's what makes you friends. But
Right,
the irony of judging her for being judgmental was lost on me, of course. But
right.
suddenly, my hand started typing something completely different that I had no aforementioned
Wow.
thinking about, and it was like, because when you make judgments like a lens,
Yeah.
the lens closes down and all you see is a small part of the whole picture. So open up. We're here waiting for you. And that ensued a
Well, it's
conversation
giving
with
me
the
goosebumps. That's
it was crazy. I mean, I knew what it was, but it
right.
was still just wow. So
It
I did
really is.
that for a year. I would write for people.
Okay.
And then one time I just was at a party and I thought I have to just try like
Right.
Enos. And it was just a phenomenal experience. Everyone was kind of blown away. And so I did that. And then in 1993, I started to do group channeling because I wanted
Right.
to see what would this voice say.
Right.
And I was just Eunice always just said she was like an antenna.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, there
Right.
wasn't any dead people or Pleiadians or angels or anything.
Right.
So when I started to do groups, I it took a while to get the people, but now I know, of course, in retrospect, like you, I mean, these
Right. Right.
women were absolutely divinely meant to be sent to me. And so the first group was in 1993, December of 1993, and from there everything has transpired. And
Wow.
when Kim and Teresa asked in a channel, who are you? And they said they were angels. You can call us angels, they said.
Okay. Right. Right.
And I wasn't completely sold on that,
Sure.
but the information was so
Yeah.
compassionate and so magnificent, and
Yeah.
everything that they were advising us to do was leading to these revelations and life-changing events. And the angels said they were here to teach us this process to resolve conflict in this revolutionary way.
Right.
And they called it world peace, one person at a time, starting with each individual. And they needed actual live humans who were having a real conflict to test their theory on.
Wow. Isn't that, first I love how, because I'm the same way where where you're talking about this channeling and the angels and you're like, but I wasn't sold on it because I still go through like that skepticism with me. Like I can give people messages and being sitting down with them, but I'm like, but really? So I understand that. But I also love how in your phrasing you said they needed real people going through real experiences. That's a big deal because so many of us sit and we wonder, why are we going through this? That's so much of an answer to some of those hardships.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And it does lead to a more kind of universal idea that we're all going through these hardships to learn to resolve conflict
Right. So
in a whatever way to bring peace.
so into this channeling of trying to find peace and with the psychic sorority, and how did yous come to define that method? Was that just through the channeling and repeat connection with them for that process?
Well, when they told us they were giving us this process, we started doing these groups in our living room, and we did these 6 master sessions that turned
Okay.
out to be, we call them the 6 steps to peace. They
Okay.
were just steps that were gonna help us totally detach from the old way of thinking and kinda take this new operating system, a new way to operate, a new way to make
Right.
decisions. And so we actually had our first conflict where we actually went and I said, "Look, what are we doing? We're sitting here, we're having our first
Right.
conflict." And we
Right.
went and got the transcript and I just read it. I said, "If you're involved in a conflict, emotionally involved in a conflict, the root of that conflict is within you."
Wow. Yeah.
And so the three of us, having been told that we were going to learn this, having accepted that we were going to do this, and then sort of having to spontaneously still have a real conflict. We weren't trying to
Yes.
have a conflict. It was a big deal what happened between us. But in that moment, our awareness was so intending that we were working with these angels, and here's the answer. And it was like this swoosh, we call it kind of a satori moment, and we all
Yeah.
start crying.
Wow.
And instead of sitting there talking to Kim and saying, you know what, I don't know what you're talking about, because all I want from you is that you're going to be able to be there when you say you're going to be there, that
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
To me saying, oh man, I got to be super aware that you guys are on a learning curve. And Kim was able to say, oh my gosh, and I have to know, I have to be. So it was
Right.
just this evolutionary moment that happened. I
Yeah.
mean, look at this story, Stephanie. It's just crazy making to think. And these women
Abs-
weren't like you and me.
Right. So
Kim was the
these are
coolest.
just everyday people.
Yeah.
I mean, just off the street, didn't identify as having abilities or anything like that.
No, Kim actually
Wow.
was she's still a lifelong Republican. She's a businesswoman, little pearls and
Right.
matching in spring stuff, and she would never have gone to a psychic ever in her life
Right.
except for crisis.
Wow.
She had crisis.
That's powerful because I think, and I'm that person where even like if I'm at an event, like I was just up in Michigan at the Paracon, and when people were coming through and I was talking about giving away a reading and just networking with people. And people were like, "Well, I don't want a reading," which I get because I'm not a person that wants to exchange readings. Like, I'm good. My guides are sassy. Like, I'm okay. I know what I should be doing. I don't need someone else to tell me. Like, I just don't want to know. And so I love this aspect of still having those thoughts where we're like, man, really, you have that skepticism, but then to move people in and for spirit to pull people in who normally would not even find themselves in those conversations, to me is just it's mind-blowing, actually, that the power that spirit had to pull everybody together. And
And
oh, go ahead.
oh, I don't want to interrupt, but
No, that's okay. I was just going to say, because you have that, and I didn't even know that or realize that about the other participants. But then pulling in, somebody like Albert Einstein with his theories and bringing all of the theory of relativity and all that science-minded stuff to things that we would not usually put science with is huge.
yeah, I think so. And I think that the way that he did it, which was hiding it out as angels, right?
Right,
Not that there
right.
wasn't an angelic presence, believe me,
Sure.
but
Yes.
they said later, we couldn't just come out in the beginning and say, hey, I'm Albert
Right.
Einstein.
Right. Because you'd be like,
But
what? No.
no, then I really,
Right.
yeah, it was hard enough to do angels. So,
Yes.
but I was talking to Kim just the other day, and I said, we were laughing about this beginning because we documented this in our book, Diaries of a Psychic Sorority.
Right.
And I said, thank God that we were together because it would have been made us crazy. And she said, you know what made me realize this was real? She said, because you were a hot mess.
Wow.
You were not some spiritual, guru, and I don't want to name anybody, but there's
Right.
people who
I
come on
do.
like, here, I'm going to like,
Very ego
and
filled. Yes.
yeah, and I didn't know where we were going at that moment.
Right.
I was just curious about groups. I was recording my very first CD. So I was well on my way to being my rock star
I
when
love
I met
that.
them and
I just
we're
picture
doing
like,
this.
like this Pat Benatar rock star then being like, guess what I just found out? Like, that's just so many different aspects of them niching together.
Yeah.
That's huge. So when you finally came to terms, with this mission and using these communications to help work towards peace, what does that look like? What does how do you do that? What did that look like then, even now?
Coming to terms with it took a long time. It took a very long time. It wasn't
Okay.
until uh, I first channeled Einstein in 1998,
Okay.
and I didn't I didn't I published that book, Party of 12: The Afterlife Interviews, but I didn't really, when I was doing group channeling, I couldn't really bring myself to say it. I just
Okay.
always said it was angels. I always said it was angels.
Right.
But after 9/11,
Yeah.
I had this powerful impelling to come out of the closet, because here was this whole book with
Oh, I
12
get it.
people in
Yeah.
afterlife who want to work for peace with us. So I did then. But honestly, it wasn't until about 2007, when after I published my first Einstein book, Imagining Einstein, and that got
Okay.
me invited all over the place.
Oh, I bet. I
Yeah,
bet.
I appeared at an event in Taos in
Wow.
2007 that was broadcast like a quarter million people, and there were 1,000 people in the audience, and I kept doing my
Wow.
kind of apologetic thing, like, "I'm not trying to convince you it's Einstein. You don't
I
have to
get
believe
I
it's
love
Einstein."
that. Yes, I get
Like,
it. I get it.
and everybody who lined up to give me a big hug afterwards said, "Stop doing that.
Yes.
Einstein, stop it, stop it." So that it
Yes.
took a long time, and like, even
It
now, even when you do it today, there's a section of the operating system that's going, "Can you really say
absolutely.
that?"
Yes. Well, and I mean, like we talked behind the show, I live in a very small town. And for quite a while I used a pseudonym. I don't necessarily talk about these things in my other profession. Hi, Jennifer. So I get that fear, and there's still times I wait for people to show up with like torches and pitchforks, because it goes against that rationale that I still have so ingrained in me. So I completely empathize with how long it really takes, and I don't think that the process ever really ends.
No, I don't think it did. In fact, I was at an event here where I live on this little island,
Yes.
and I sat down randomly next to these two women the other night, and suddenly we started talking. And before I knew what was coming out of my mouth, I was saying, um, "Well, I'm a psychic channel." Now, I'm like you. My little town, that's not a big. I mean,
Right.
they know it now, but
Right.
not. We don't talk about it. And they said, "Oh my God, you must have sat down right next to you must have known, because," and then suddenly off we were to the races with a conversation like this.
Right. Right.
So,
And that's the one thing that I never ceases to amaze me with spirit. And we had talked today about being backstage. I didn't happen upon you because you're local. I mean, in this area, you're very local. I found you on something that goes out to thousands of people. And so the fact that I contacted you, you saw value in saying yes, and then find out you're about an hour away is incredible. So it is, and I think when we do sit down and we have those conversations, and there's times too I catch myself and I go, oh, did I just said that out loud, oh crud, but it usually works out in benefit, or there's something there that somebody else needed to hear, or I needed to hear. So we kind of got to trust those spirit-led conversations.
well, and I also think there's a kind of a respect for people, that we're not foisting our, you
Right.
know, my impressions and
You're
my
right.
intuitions on anyone. It's like, no, no, but
So what oh, and Jennifer says too, she said, I just had this whole thought today in meditation. She said she sat with those feelings and tried to work through them. So for all of us, and Jennifer is a very gifted psychic medium as well. I think we really do struggle with that at all points in our journey.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it keeps us humble, and it should, because
absolutely.
this is a big gift, I think, that we need to
Yes.
be
Yes.
sacred.
I'm glad that I see it that way now. I did not always see it that way. But I am kind of curious. So, when I think people think about channeling, or they might think about like trans mediumship, what is the difference? Or do you have people ask you, is there a difference between you channeling and what trans mediums do?
I don't think so. I consider channeling to be very much like I used to write music when I was 13,
Right.
and the way I
Right.
described it was, I would go into a place, I'm 13, right? That was like
Right.
outer space,
I
and I
love
would
it.
hear 4, 8 bars with a
Right.
little melody, and I'd take it and I'd bring it out and I'd translate it into a piano
Right.
part and a voice part, and I'd have 8 bars that I would play
Wow.
over and over and over, and then I would hear the next 4 or 8,
Right.
and then so it was like being squeezed out of a toothpaste tube, this information.
Absolutely. That makes sense.
And that's everybody. That's everybody
Right.
who's an artist, who paints. It's
Yes.
any artist who plays music,
Yeah.
especially those who improvise. But it is the process where we go into the nothing, and somehow
Right.
each of us individually find a way to
Yeah.
bring that back. And listening for those songs I wrote all those years ago is
Right.
really no different than listening for the voice of Einstein.
Absolutely.
It's just the learning curve
Yes.
of
Yes.
discernment of what you're actually doing, and what's me, what's what's you, what's me, what's my ego, what's the
Right.
greater good, what's the whole, all those things.
And that can be such a muddy, murky area too, separating and pulling those things out. And there's a vulnerability in that, which I don't personally enjoy feeling vulnerable. And so working through that. But I like how you relate it again back to music and artists. And it just popped into my head what, society calls creativity really is not any different than intuitiveness. You're acting on that intuitiveness that's within you. So I do. Oh, Keith says, the more I work on my spiritual journey, the more I learn how to work on healing. I think that's true. Do you find that's true in the process?
Well, aren't they kind of one and the same? I mean,
You would
we're
think, yeah.
we're on this spiritual journey to, I think, for unity, actually, which
Yes.
is another word
Yes.
for healing, if you're unified within. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
So I do want to take a little bit of a break, but when we come back, I want to really shift and talk about how you focus the energy, how you work on that collective healing of peace for the collective, for society, for the world as a whole, because I'm very interested in that. So I'll be right back in just a moment. Stick around.
No matter the questions, Ellie Weisensell can help you find the answers. Ellie is a gifted intuitive and a natural energy healer, which she applies using the body code and emotion code healing systems, among others, to help you achieve balance for your best results. Are you looking for more clarity about which direction to follow with your life, health, or career? Let Ellie guide you. As a psychic, Ellie can provide clarity to the path you are on, so you may use your free will to change the direction of your life. Are you wanting to communicate with a loved one who's passed? As a certified psychic medium, Ellie Weisensell can connect you with your loved ones on the other side to facilitate healing or offer closure. To schedule your appointment with Ellie, look her up on Facebook at Ellie Weisensell Psychic Medium, or email her at ellieweisensell@gmail.com. That's Ellie Weisensell, Weisensell.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Chat with Charlie. If you're just tuning in, it's about 25 past the hour. And our guest today is Barbra With. Barbra is an amazing channeler and psychic who's been channeling and really working within her abilities since the mid 80s. And I want to say hello, Eddie. Thank you so much for tuning in from Liverpool. So excited to have you join us from across the pond. But we're just starting to talk about using abilities for resolution, for healing. And if you check out the website, and I'll share the link again, synergyalliance.llc in just a moment, you talk about conflict revolution, Barbara. And I love the quote that you have from Diaries of a Psychic Sorority, Talking with Angels. It says, the road to evolutionary change will come from learning to resolve our conflicts in regenerative ways. Sorry, I just couldn't get the word out. Yes. That's huge. Like, can we talk about that?
Yeah, and it's huge. It was huge. The second big group channel that we did with the Psychic Sorority. The first one was about the voices of culture. The
Okay.
second one they called conflict resolution. But what they said that made my head spin around, like the what? Say what? Was what I
Right.
had read earlier, that if you are involved emotionally in a conflict, the root of yours, piece of it, is in you. Now, it sounds so practical and of
It
course,
does. Yeah.
but when I heard it, being somebody who was a hot mess and doing a lot of projection,
Right.
especially of emotions, that really totally just made me screech in my tracks. And so as I took that personally, like they
Yeah.
would say things like, experience your emotions without thoughts around them. They're like
Wow.
electricity. If you
Wow.
take the thought away and there's no story or judgment or
Right.
anything. And so I would be like at the gym, like walking and like doing thought experiments. Like, well, what does that mean if I just
Yeah.
take my emotion? I just,
That's where I kind of went.
yeah. And then it all went to body. It all went in my
Right.
body, my emotions, experiencing them there. So
Yeah.
it was these incremental little curious steps that led to one
Yeah.
thing after another, after another, after another, that started to really build. And it became, we had a 6 steps to peace is what we called it at the
Okay.
time. But I was working as a freelancer in this nonprofit in St. Paul, and I was working for both the programs department and the marketing department, and it was taking them 9 months to get a trifold marketing flyer for the
That's crazy.
program. So I went to the
Right.
president and I said, "I've got this new thing. I've never done it before, but I would love to be able to use it as staff development."
Right.
And she gave me a chance, and I worked with people who had been going to the channelings and being a part of
Okay.
this, and we built a curriculum, and we were trying to figure out what to call it, because we didn't want to call it conflict resolution because it had nothing to do with that.
Right.
And so one of the women said, let's call it conflict evolution. And we
Yes.
thought, ooh, isn't that's nice. And then she got some wild hair and she kind of stormed off and left the project.
Right.
Well, not
It
time for
happens. It
her.
happens. Right.
Just do conflict evolution. So then Teresa said, well, just put an R in front of it. And then, of course, conflict revolution. And not just because
Yes.
it's a revolutionary way to not just deal with conflict, but install this new operating system. But
Right.
because so much of it involves looking in the mirror and having the focus
Which none of us
revolve.
want to do, right? We
No,
don't want to do that.
nobody wants to. But when
Right.
you do it,
Yes.
miracles ensue.
Yes. Well, and I think it's interesting that we're having this conversation today, because I'm actually in a, let's say, a conflict with somebody in my family. And so, but and exactly what you had said was the solutions in, like, there's all those parts in us, and there's all those parts because things irritate us or frustrate us. No, we don't, Jennifer, because it's pieces of us. It's those little vulnerable pieces of us. And that's, most of us don't even like looking just in the mirror because we'll pick our flaws, right? And and that's just skin deep. So when we peel that away, you know, man, you're
Yeah.
right. We're left with a hot mess.
And when I do these workshops, or when I used to before, when we did them live, and I'd
Yeah.
have 25 people, and everybody would have a giant Post-it note, and we'd break out. There's only 3 human dimensions we work with, and one of
Okay.
them is emotion. And
Yeah.
I'd write emotion in red across, on the bottom. There's only about 2 conflicts in the entire world. And
Wow.
everybody feels all of the worst emotions that you can possibly name. They
Sure.
do. It's just a
Yeah,
natural part of life,
absolutely.
but we don't know what to do with them. We don't acknowledge them. And then when we get mad at our sister, which, I mean, I've got tons of conflicts. By name,
Right.
I've named them,
Right. I get
the
it.
drunken marketing manager,
Yes.
but when we stop and think, well, if I'm triggered by this behavior in that person, how would I feel if I was the one actually doing that behavior?
Right.
And so let's look where it is.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is a direct mirror. Sometimes it has
Prisms. Right.
nothing to do with
Yeah.
the arena of what's going on.
Yeah. And as you said that, like I literally, and that's why I said prisms, as I saw it's like just a hole into all these different perspectives within, you know? Wow.
Well,
This
and it's
is
why you're triggered by somebody in your family
right.
and somebody else, it doesn't even touch them because
Right.
it's very specific to you and not your sister.
Right. Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And so when people, are going through these things, or how do you tell people, because you have a ton of books, which I'm really looking into reading these now because my mind is like expanding and I want all this knowledge. But how do you tell people, the books or the knowledge you share or your workshops can help them individually?
Well, first of all, I look for the participation of the willing.
Right.
I look for people who are hooked, you
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
you read it, you think it, you go, "Oh,
Oh, and
what's
it just
this?"
connects. It's like a
Yeah,
magnet. It just sucks you
yeah.
in. Yes.
I'm not here to try to, like I said, I'm not here to convince
Right.
anybody I talk to dead people or prove I'm psychic or do
Right.
any of those things, but to work with those people because more and more and more are coming. More
Yes.
and more and more want to have this conversation.
Why do you think that is?
I think because we've been pushed as humanity
Mhm.
to the edge of, not even the edge. We've been pushed into insanity
Yeah.
in these past several years,
Mhm.
and it's certainly a slow moving over a long period of time. But when it gets here, it feels like it's. And with COVID and all that
Yeah.
happened,
So much.
and now you see how people can't even relate to their neighbors, their actual real neighbors. And I think in our bodies there's a very natural sadness, whether we think about it or not. I think we as humans who love community, even if we
Right.
are diverse and have different
Right.
opinions, and we're being, I think our brains are being manipulated.
Right.
But then again, conflict revolution was always a way to get us out from under the manipulation of our intellects and our egos that were holding the
Right.
whole system hostage. So
Right.
it translates for a time when it is the answer to those kinds of issues.
Right. And I think, I like, and you kind of touched upon it, as society, we're coming together, right? There's this big awakening, but yet the center we're pulling apart. So it's this, back and forth of coming together and pulling apart. And, I think about, um, a lot of us can't even have political conversations or religious conversations anymore because we so want people to just understand it from our perspective. And so, there's this pushing back and forth. But when you look at even some of the things that you said of why does that ideology in somebody else bother me? Right? Because I feel like we all want to come together for answers. We all want a resolution. We just disagree on how to get there. So I think that's great as far as, well, why does that bother me? Why does it bother me who they voted for? Why does it bother me this? And really looking at that from different angles.
And that's what the trigger part of conflict revolution does. It
Right.
helps us start to create the sound bites, we call them, because our minds can go insane with thinking and
Oh
analyzing
gosh,
patterns.
yes.
So we get these sound bites where we analyze down the conflict and we get maybe one or two, like
Right.
for me, the drunken marketing manager was,
Sure.
she makes me do her work and then she criticizes me for it. That was my sound bite. That
Okay.
was
Yeah.
all,
Oh, I
because
get that. Yeah.
oh,
Mhm.
well, when it took me a long time observe myself. Well, what? And show me where I do that. And
Right.
I had to call a friend. It was like, millionaire. It's like, Teresa, what is that? And she reminded me very quickly of a time when I was having trouble in my marriage,
Sure.
where I criticized. I
Mm.
made him do my work, and then I criticized him for it. And when I had that aha moment, it was it's what we call it hanging and dang, because you're like,
Oh,
dang, that was
yeah.
me. That was me doing that. Now what are
Mhm.
we gonna do? This is the
Right.
ultimate self-responsibility. This is the ultimate self-scrutiny. And if we
Yes.
don't do it for
Right.
ourselves, who else is gonna do it?
Well, and it's so easy to not do it, right? Like it is. It's so easy to just be like, I'm not the one with the problem. I'm fine. I'm healed.
This is
I'm
the
I'm high
point.
vibing. Right.
Right. But that's the point of a nonviolent worldwide action to end the age of war, because it
Right.
isn't working.
No. No.
Because it is our collective conflicts that we're not able to reach. We can in this way, but
Yeah.
in other ways, even conflict resolution.
Right.
So you learn how to say things with compassion, and then you negotiate well, and well, that's all well and good, but
Right.
it's not getting to the root, which then naturally manifests in ways that you can't even
Right.
begin to go at in the arena.
No. And as you're talking about the root and what I'm seeing or how it's relating to me is, you've like a literal tree root, and it twists and it weaves and it winds and it grows into other things. And so it's not, I mean, this is a lot, and I really know why spirit's making me have this conversation. But you have these things that irritate you and they bother you. And it's like you can address one situation, but then where does that path lead you to the next thing? So it's like you're pulling apart and cutting apart and really looking at everything, which is
Well,
it
when you
scares me, Barbara. It scares me.
in a good way, though, because
Yes, yes.
when you get that far into the root,
Right,
then when you change it down there, all these other conflicts all shift,
right.
as opposed to going into the arena of one.
Yes, yes.
And because the system, this unified field that we brought forth, is a perfect system, it perfectly projects into physical reality what is in this non-physical energy. It's a perfect projection, the physical world, and all the wars we're at. So if
Right.
we're conflicted here, it will perfectly project.
Yeah.
We align to compassion, as we call it, in bringing these three human dimensions into alignment. Then there's this perfect, and that's when you see the synchronicity happening, when you see
Yeah.
stuff shifting that is beyond your three, where five senses, where it's happening
Yeah.
from the
And
bigger sense.
it is. And one of the viewers was talking about having gone through, you get to a level and you think it's a one of a kind story, but it's going over and over it, and you really go through the same story for years. And that can be heartbreaking. And it sounds like if we can, get these tools, which you have put in a book, in our hands, that it can save us a lot of those torturous years.
It definitely reduces all levels of conflict.
Yeah.
And also one really simple thing that you're talking about, how it took years. Yeah, I know,
Right.
years. What tightens that up is this idea that the three human dimensions are like spiritual organs.
Okay.
So the intellect here in the brain, intuition here in the heart, and emotion here in the solar plexus.
Okay.
And what we learn is that to feel emotion
Right.
is not expressing emotion.
Oh, that's
For
powerful.
years and years, we tell the story and we have the feeling, and it doesn't seem to go
Yes.
away, and we tell the story again. But when you separate the story,
Mhm.
this is walking in the gym, the first time I did it, where I took the story away and
Yeah.
you just honor the emotion with breath, with present moment, breathing through your body and letting it flow onto this
Right.
string that we're flowing.
Right.
And don't let it marry to those thoughts.
Yeah.
You have to maybe have a different like thought to put in there. One of mine was like, I don't need to know why I'm mad. I just need to feel and breathe and be mad. I don't need to know why I'm mad. I just need to feel and breathe and
I
I'm mad.
like that.
And when
Wow.
you release that, there's
Right.
this liberation that starts to happen in your thinking as well. Because
Right.
now your thinking isn't as supercharged.
No, and you're not having to connect it to something.
Right.
You're not having, to assign it to, well, I'm mad. I'm going to be mad at my husband because I need a place to put the emotion. You're just having this is all mind blowing to me, guys. You're just have the emotion.
Just have it, breathe it. Don't
Right.
project it onto anybody. And that's part of why we're at World War III, is because
Yes,
this is what the world is doing, is projecting. And we
absolutely.
all, even the best people, even the people that are on my side, so to speak,
Right, right,
even my dearest friends who are just hating on fill in the blank of the political figure, doesn't
right.
matter what
Yeah, it
side.
doesn't matter. Pick one.
And
Right.
I want to bring them all into the Con Rev class and go, let's see what is the mirror of Trump. One I did a revolution one. I had to revolve Scott Walker.
Okay.
He was this governor of the state of Wisconsin who had just
I'm
gotten
familiar.
in. And it was so, I won't tell the story now, but it
Right.
was such a powerful transforming moment in my life that it didn't have to do with the political arena.
Sure.
But when I figured it out, it let me detach from the political arena.
Yeah.
It let me not project so much onto Scott Walker.
Sure. That makes sense.
And it doesn't mean that there aren't people out there doing horrible, evil things. It don't
Absolutely.
get me
Absolutely.
wrong.
Right.
But when we take care of our own, then we become more empowered to go
Yes.
into a conflicted situation and choose that. We call it 0 degrees of separation from compassion. We get to go in and choose, how am I going to respond to this that's really going to be for the good of the whole here?
Yeah.
Because now you're not getting
And I like that.
triggered.
You're looking at the whole, because so much is this perspective right here. My little world, what's going to suit my family, what affects us. And that's part of what's getting us in trouble, is because every little family or every person, we expect different things. The best for us is different than the collective. And so being able to separate that and look at the big picture is another pivotal moment in this thought process.
Yes, and it is the basis of all the decision making of the new operating system, and it starts with what's for the good of the whole for you.
Wow.
What's for the good of the whole of your emotional
Right.
situation, of your intellectual condition, and your intuitive power, and are they all working together? And when they are, the rest of it falls into place.
Yes.
It
Yes.
really does.
It does. I agree. And I can't believe how fast the time is going
Oh my
while we're
gosh.
talking. And I'm like, oh, I need it to slow down. But I'm going to put up your website for everybody, because please, there's just so much information on there. You also I saw that you have bookings on there for readings. You teach master classes. So there's all kinds of references. But I do want to give you an opportunity also to tell the viewers about your books, because I feel like some of that information will be beneficial. I know there's people here probably like me who are like, I need this knowledge.
Well, the Diaries of a Psychic Sorority, and this is all on the website too.
Okay.
That is our literal diaries of the whole story of how it
Okay.
got started, and the transcripts. Party of 12, the afterlife interviews, are the 12 interviews with the famous dead people, starting with Princess Di and going on. And then Imagining Einstein and Einstein et al. Those are if you want to know about the unified field theories and the maps of human
Right.
consciousness. And then Party of 12 post 9/11 is my autobiography of
I love it.
after I came out of the closet and was invited all
Right.
around the world to do this work. So
That's just amazing. I love your story. I love more than your story and getting to meet you, just the resonation, across the board of working for that collective, working to just end the madness. That's the best I can put it. Just ending the madness, looking back at accountability and looking back at being whole with our neighbors, being whole with society, and getting, I think there was a point where there was a flow, just like in nature, there was a flow with its people. And I think we've lost that. We block each other from that energy exchange. And I really feel like this is putting some of that back in. It's rippling the tides back out, if that makes sense.
Yes. And when we take responsibility for our own intellectual self-judgments of
Right.
ourselves, and we accept ourselves, we don't need anybody else's acceptance.
No. And I like that too, because
Yeah.
even in our situations and coming out of the closet, or our self-doubts and all these things, really, what does it matter? And so just being able to find ways to move past that. Barbara, it has been amazing, just amazing meeting you and talking to you. And I'll be reaching out after the show because I would like to talk to you just personally, because
Yeah,
I'm just so excited.
absolutely.
I'm like, we need to go have coffee. So,
Yes,
but thank you. Thank you
absolutely.
for your time. Thank you for coming on and talking to the viewers. We appreciate you. And everybody, again, if you're looking for that website, it's up in the comments. So feel free to scroll through, check it out. You cannot not love Barbra's energy and amazing story. So
Thanks
with
all.
yes, and with that, we're going to cut to our last break. And when we come back, I'll tell you what we got going on in the show in the next couple weeks. Thank you, Barbra.
You bet. Thank you.
Looking for a unique paranormal experience? The Haunted Rock Island YMCA Paracon, October 7th, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. is just the event you're looking for. You will have the opportunity to investigate the Haunted Rock Island YMCA with ACG Paranormal. Visit with over 60 paranormal and metaphysical vendors from 8 or more states. And pre-order your t-shirts at dvinar@aol.com. Visit a psychic gallery reading, mediums, tea leaf reading, animal communication, dream interpretation, aura reading, tarot and oracle card readings, or get a Reiki healing. See a demonstration of the Estes method by Carly Bird. Presentations by Nick Simons and Aaron G. Thompson of 28 Days Haunted, Greg Bakken from Ghostbox Radio, and headliner Rick Hayes, along with many folks you'll see on Paraflix. Be sure to like and follow our sponsors: Paraflix, WLTK-DB Talk Radio LLC, Studio 6 Productions, Unturned Pages, and Ocean Eye Crystals. General admission is only $5, and all proceeds go directly to the Haunted Rock Island YMCA. For more information on the Haunted Rock Island YMCA Paracon and vendors, look for them on Facebook under Events.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the last 10 minutes of the Chat with Charlie show right here on WLTK-DB Let's Talk Radio. If you're just tuning in, you missed a fantastic conversation with Barbra With, and I hope you'll go back and check it out and go through the comments, check out her webpage. Tons of information about channeling, but what I love about the information is that it all leads to a way for self-reflection, to end conflict, to take accountability within ourselves and that vulnerability. So check it out. Michael, I'm buying you a book. I think you need some conflict resolution. Speaking of Michael and conflict resolution, as you guys know, we have a contest going on this station every month for your favorite podcast. So feel free to hop on over to WLTKDB.com, check out charts, vote up, down, sideways, whatever. Just go on and vote, have a little fun, and vote for your show. Also, all right. So I got a lot going on as I'm looking at my calendar and wanting to touch base with all of you. I love that you guys have such a good sense of humor. Michael says he can't read. I know he can. So tons of things coming up. Some of you have asked me about events. I don't do a lot of events anymore, but you can see me in Ashland, Wisconsin on the 16th at the Soul and Synergy event. I'll be there just kind of networking, coming in to talk to you guys and, doing some readings for people that might be interested. Coming up on the show, next week, we are welcoming Heather Wagner back from the Edge magazine. It's always a fun time when Heather comes in. So pop in, see what's new with her. We also have Pete Orbea. I know you guys miss Pete. Pete was such a fantastic host from Paranormal Pete. And then Ellie and I will be finishing out the month with In the Mix. And I'm sorry we missed last week's episode of In the Mix, but it gave us some more time to do some research on the weird news that we just kind of hear floating around out there. Coming up in October, we have a couple changes coming to the show, so watch for those. But I'm really excited. While I was at the Paracon in Michigan a couple weeks ago, I got to meet a lot of fantastic people, a lot of like-minded people. And I can't wait to bring some of these people to this platform for you to meet and for you to talk to. We have Dean. He's also known as the military medium. He's going to be coming on. I have the Quite Unusual podcast coming on. Fantastic show. If you guys are looking for new podcasts, check them out. And Todd and I are going to do our Halloween special like we did last year. I probably won't be dressed up as Winifred this year, but I'm definitely dressing up. And I think I'm going to get Todd a wig. I think Todd would look good in a wig. What do you guys think? All right. What else? Oh, this is important. Dean is a very nice guy. I was going to ask you if you knew him, Michael. He reminded me actually a lot of you. And his booth was right behind mine. And I really enjoyed talking to him during the event. He is super awesome. Yeah, Courtney, he can read cards because there's no words on them. Right? He says because they have pictures. So one thing that I do, and you guys are aware, is Barnaby is gracious enough to let me hang out with the Wisconsin CAPS team and investigate. Ellie does also. And they have a contest right now where you can send in information. You can write to them if you are dealing with a haunted house. They're doing the most haunted house in Wisconsin. So it's a contest going on. They're going to get it down to 5 participants where we will come out, we will investigate and see if we can help you or deem your house the most haunted in Wisconsin. So check that out. You have to hop over to the Wisconsin CAPS page for that. But I'm very excited about that. It's going to be a great time. Or if you know somebody who maybe doesn't want to be in the contest because they're not excited their house is haunted. I mean, most of the time people are not excited about that, but they still need help. Hop on over and catch Barnaby and we will get out there and see what we can do to help you. I always love coming on here and talking to you guys. I really appreciate you just letting me be a platform to help educate, to help bring you resources like Barbara and the other people that kind of come across my path. I'm very honored to do that. And I appreciate you for tuning in and dealing with me every week. Don't forget, there are a lot of great shows coming up on the station right after this show and throughout the week. So make sure you stick around, check them out, support all the shows on the station because they're all great and they're all here for very similar reasons. I thank you guys all for tuning in and I will see you next Wednesday right here with Kelly. See you next week, guys.
The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.
Thank you.